January 2026. Brooks Koepka just walked away from LIV Golf to return to the PGA Tour. The golf world erupted. Finally, the PGA Tour wins, right? Wrong. This isn't a story about one league defeating another. This is about both sides losing while golf legends watch in horror. Phil Mickelson calls the tour obnoxiously greedy. Greg Norman claims he's been fixing golf, not destroying it. Tiger Woods feels betrayed. Brandel Chamblee warns the tour is committing suicide. The numbers don't lie. Sponsors are fleeing, fans are tuning out, and the greatest players in history are telling us exactly why the PGA Tour is dying. Phil Mickelson. 6 major championships, 45 PGA Tour victories. But in 2022, he became the man who dared to say what everyone else was thinking. Here's a story that reveals everything. Mickelson competed in the match 5 times. Each time, the PGA Tour forced him to write a check for $1 million, not to enter the competition, not for prize money, but for the rights to use his own image, his own shots, his own media. A Hall of Fame golfer paying the tour $1 million to appear on television in an event the tour didn't even organize. At the Saudi International in February 2022, Mickelson finally exploded. It's not public knowledge, all that goes on, but the players don't have access to their own media. The tour's obnoxious greed has really opened the door for opportunities elsewhere. In his Golf Digest interview that month, Mickelson got specific. They also charge companies to use shots I have hit. And when I did the match, there have been 5 of them. The tour forced me to pay them $1 million each time for my own media rights. That type of greed is, to me, beyond obnoxious. By August 2025, now playing for LIV Golf, Mickelson revealed the emotional toll. I used to have anxiousness going to a PGA Tour event, with all the details and things that would go on. I would be anxious and not want to go. I'd go as late as I could. A LIV event, I can't wait to get here. Mickelson claimed the PGA Tour controls roughly $20 billion in digital assets and media rights that belong to the players who created those moments. The tour disputes this, saying they return 55% of revenue to players. Mickelson counters they only give back 26%. For comparison, the NFL and NBA share approximately 50% with their athletes. This isn't just about money, it's about ownership. When you hit a career-defining shot, who owns that moment? Greg Norman had been planning this for decades. 20 PGA Tour wins, 2 Open Championships, and a 30-year grudge against the system that kept players as servants rather than owners. When Saudi Arabia's public investment fund came calling with over $5 billion, Norman saw his chance not to destroy the PGA Tour, but to force it into the 21st century. In December 2025, Norman addressed the biggest misconception on the Straight Talk podcast. The thing that bothers me the most about it is the perception that I was trying to destroy the PGA Tour. That is the total opposite. We were trying to work within the ecosystem. Competition is a wonderful thing. In his October 2024 Australian Golf Digest interview, he laid it bare. I'm a disruptor. I see weaknesses. It was unfairness. It was unfair to the players, not just to Greg Norman in the day, but to everybody. And here's the kicker. Norman claims he won. In December 2025, but now look at the PGA Tour. Private equity came into the PGA Tour because of LIV, $3 billion. So all of a sudden now the players control the policy board. Now all of a sudden the players can control their own destiny. Norman used Saudi billions as a battering ram. The PGA Tour had to accept $3 billion from Strategic Sports Group. They had to double purses. They had to give players board seats. LIV Golf might be failing, but Norman's mission, he'd argue it succeeded perfectly. "15 major championships, 82 PGA Tour wins. The man who built modern golf into a billion-dollar empire. Tiger Woods turned down the Saudi money. Why? Because he believed in legacy, tradition, and the PGA Tour that made him a global icon. At the 150th Open Championship in July 2022, Woods made his position clear. I disagree with LIV Golf. I think that what they've done is they've turned their back on what has allowed them to get to this position. Then came the betrayal. June 2023. PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan, the man who had asked players to remain loyal, to reject Saudi money on moral grounds, suddenly announced a merger framework with the very same Saudi Public Investment Fund, without telling the players, without consulting Tiger. Woods' response was measured but devastating. We were very disappointed with what happened, and we took steps to make sure that we weren't going to be left out of the process like that again. Those steps meant joining the policy board as a player director, taking control back from the suits. By December 2025, at the Hero World Challenge, Woods revealed what he's fighting for now. We're trying to figure out what is the best schedule possible, so we can create the best fields and have the most viewership and also the most fan involvement. Translation: shorter season, starting after the Super Bowl, ending by Labor Day. No more competing with the NFL. Quality over quantity. Tiger stayed loyal. The tour rewarded him with a knife in the back. Now he's rebuilding it from the inside. Rory McIlroy was LIV Golf's most vocal enemy. The five-time major champion who completed his career Grand Slam at the 2025 Masters didn't just defend the PGA Tour, he went to war for it. Then something changed. By January 2026 at the Dubai Invitational, McIlroy was delivering a brutal autopsy of LIV Golf's failure. It's not as if they made any huge signings this year, is it? They haven't signed anyone who moves the needle, and I don't think they will. I mean, they could re-sign Bryson for hundreds of millions of dollars, but even if they do, it doesn't change their product, does it? He got specific about the math. A lot of these guys' contracts are up. They're going to ask for the same number or an even bigger number. LIV have spent $5 billion or $6 billion, and they're going to have to spend another 5 or 6 just to maintain where they are. At the CNBC CEO Council Forum in November 2025, McIlroy explained the real problem. I think for golf in general, it would be better if there was unification. But we have to realize we were trying to deal with people that were acting, in some ways, irrationally, just in terms of the capital they were allocating and the money they were spending. $5 to $6 billion spent, zero return on investment. The Saudis are burning money to keep a league nobody watches, but McIlroy evolved. When asked about welcoming LIV players back, this is great as it gets. Brooks back to where he belongs. He is one of the best players in the world, and anything that makes the traditional tour stronger is a good thing in my book. On the How Leaders Lead podcast in July 2025, he explained, being able to change your mind is one of the greatest things in the human experience. If you can't change your mind based on new information, then that's not a great place to start from. Rory went from idealist to realist, and what he sees now terrifies him. Brandel Chamblee doesn't care who he pisses off. Former PGA Tour winner turned Golf Channel analyst, he's become the voice saying what the corporate sponsors won't. Both sides are failing. On LIV Golf, Chamblee pulls no punches. In his January 2026 podcast, they're not even close to warranting world ranking points. Because the very nature of that tour is not about earned status, it's about invitation. LIV is not a competition. LIV is an exhibition. It's got no business getting world ranking points. 0, 0. Then Chamblee turned his sights on the PGA Tour itself. Nobody wants to watch the same players beating the same players every week. I would argue that with the PGA Tour reducing the number of exempt players, it risks looking more like LIV than differentiating itself from it. Think about that. The PGA Tour is copying the very model it claims to despise. Smaller fields, limited access, the same faces every week. Chamblee backed this up with data. Tiger Woods won 39% of World Golf Championship events when fields were small and elite. But in regular PGA Tour events with full fields, 22%. In majors with 150 players, 15.7%. On the Trey Wingo podcast in January 2026, few sports stories trump the underdog story. The tour should be fighting to expand fields, not reduce them. I just don't see how making the schedule smaller is the best way to make the tour more about merit and less about profit. The PGA Tour is becoming exactly what it claims to hate. Let's talk about the one metric that matters. Are people actually watching? 2024 was a disaster for PGA Tour viewership. Sunday, final rounds dropped 19%. Saturday rounds fell 17%. The fans are tuning out. But LIV Golf? Even worse. The Singapore finale drew 34,000 viewers. 34,000. College bowling gets better ratings. When LIV Golf Miami went head-to-head against the PGA Tour's Valero Texas Open, the result was embarrassing. 1.7 million viewers for the tour versus 484,000 for LIV. Here's what the people who actually love golf are saying. Lou Stagner, Data Insights lead at Arcos Golf, posted this in December 2024. All of this just sucks, to be honest. I miss the PGA Tour I grew up watching. I don't like that the landscape is fractured. I don't like small field signature events. I used to never miss watching an event. Now there are a ton of events I don't watch a single minute of. Hank Haney, Tiger Woods' former coach, complained on his podcast in 2025, I know people rip LIV, but if I want to watch golf, I at least want to see players hit some shots. The final round at Torrey Pines, the first 9 holes took 3 hours to play. The problem isn't just that people are choosing one tour over another. The problem is they're not choosing golf at all. When the money leaves, you know it's real. And the money is leaving the PGA Tour in waves. Farmers Insurance, 17 years sponsoring Torrey Pines, 2026 will be their last year. Wells Fargo, 13 years committed. Gone. Honda, 42 years of history, replaced by Cognizant. Webb Simpson saw it coming. As a PGA Tour player director, he warned in 2024, this model is broken at the scale of purses that we've done over the last year. The sponsors are starting to feel it. The tour needed to compete with LIV Golf's guaranteed millions, so they created signature events with $20 million purses. Sounds great for players, catastrophic for sponsors who suddenly can't afford to stay. When Jay Monahan secretly negotiated with the Saudi Public Investment Fund, he destroyed trust with everyone, players and sponsors alike. Xander Schauffele didn't hold back after the June 2023 announcement. Monahan has a long road ahead of him to gain some of that trust back from the membership. Nate Lashley was even harsher. I don't think Monahan has a backbone. He seems to cater to 15 to 20 players. Here's the death spiral. To compete with LIV, the tour raised purses. Sponsors couldn't afford it and left. Now the tour relies on private equity. That's not a business model. That's life support. (1968). Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, and Gardner Dickinson led the revolution that created the PGA Tour, splitting from the PGA of America. Players wanted control of their destiny, but they drew a line. When some suggested creating their own rules of golf, Nicklaus refused. At the Honda Classic in March 2019, we all took the position that we are not bigger than the game of golf, and the game of golf is the USGA and the R&A. We felt like if we did that, then we're making ourselves more important than the ruling bodies of the game of golf, and we didn't think it was the right thing to do. Gary Player, 88 years old, watched the chaos unfold in 2024. Those who have been loyal, like Tiger or Rory, who turned down fortunes, they should be compensated in some way or another. Otherwise, the resentment will continue. Jack Nicklaus himself acknowledged the problem in 2024. The best result would be for the best players to play against each other more often. That's not happening right now. Nicklaus famously turned down $750 million from LIV Golf. He chose principles over profit. But here's the question that haunts golf. Should he have? The younger generation looks at that decision and thinks he's crazy. Why sacrifice hundreds of millions for tradition? The world Nicklaus and Palmer built is dying. December 2025, Brooks Koepka, 5-time major champion, walked away from LIV Golf with a year left on his contract. By January 2026, he was back on the PGA Tour. The penalties? $5 million to charity. No equity shares until 2031. No sponsor invitations to signature events in 2026. No FedEx Cup bonus money. Sounds harsh, but here's what really happened. The PGA Tour blinked. Wyndham Clark captured the frustration on Sirius XM in January 2026. I personally really like Brooks, and I think it's ultimately really good for the PGA Tour. But also, as a guy who had an opportunity to go to LIV, it's kind of frustrating that he's able to get the cake and also eat it. If you would have told me that I could have gone for a year and a half, make a boatload of money, and then be able to come back and play on the tour, I think almost everyone would have done that. Tiger Woods revealed how desperate the process was. After a TGL match in January 2026, we took that letter and then took it to both boards and tried to implement a plan. We had lots of subsequent meetings, worked through the holidays. There was no days off. They worked through Christmas to get one player back. The message to every top golfer: leave, get paid, come back when LIV collapses. The PGA Tour will take you. Meritocracy is officially dead. So where does this end? 3 possible futures. Scenario 1, managed decline. Probability, 45%. The PGA Tour and LIV Golf both continue to exist, but they shrink into irrelevance. The 4 majors and the Ryder Cup become the only tournaments that truly matter. Everything else is just qualifying. Scenario 2, player revolution. Probability, 30%. The top 50 players get tired of being pawns in someone else's game. They form a completely new league, player-owned, like tennis's ATP. They take the best ideas from both tours. Meritocracy from the PGA Tour, guaranteed money and equity from LIV. Scenario 3, Saudi victory. Probability, 25%. The public investment fund eventually buys controlling interest in PGA Tour enterprises. Full merger under Saudi ownership. Players get equity and massive purses, but at the cost of independence. None of these scenarios is a happy ending. The PGA Tour isn't dying. That's the wrong way to think about it. What's dying is an idea. The idea that golf could be both a pure meritocracy and a billion-dollar business. The idea that tradition and capitalism could coexist peacefully. The idea that loyalty matters more than money. Phil Mickelson was right about media rights. Greg Norman was right about forcing change. Tiger Woods was right about betrayed trust. Rory McIlroy was right about pragmatism. Brandel Chamblee was right about dying meritocracy. Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer were right that something precious is being lost. But they all missed the fundamental truth. You cannot preserve the past while demanding the future. Golf chose money over tradition. Now it's paying the price. The question isn't whether the PGA Tour can be saved. The question is whether it should be. Maybe the old model deserves to die so something better can be born. Or maybe we'll look back in 10 years and realize what we lost. The PGA Tour isn't dying. It's already dead. We're just watching the funeral.